Losene Keita's UFC debut didn't go as planned, but it doesn't look like the story ends there. The highly touted former two-division Octagon champion was scheduled to face Patricio "Pitbull" Freire at UFC Paris in what was set to be one of the card's most intriguing featherweight bouts. Instead, things fell apart at the scales when Keita came in 3 pounds over the limit. Freire refused to accept the fight under those circumstances, leaving Keita without his big debut moment. The situation left fans frustrated, and it sparked questions about whether Keita would even keep his place on the roster after such a rocky start. But according to UFC Senior Vice President of International Operations David Shaw, there's no indication that the promotion plans to part ways with him. "I believe he does get another opportunity on the UFC roster," Shaw told reporters after the event. "Honestly, I don't know the specifics. I think a few of us were surprised the fight didn't happen, but in any case, it's going to be good to have him on the roster. He hasn't been cut, not that I know of." Keita, who entered the UFC with plenty of hype after dominating on the European scene, took responsibility for the weight miss in a social media statement. "For the first time in 25 fights, I failed to make weight, and it had to happen on my UFC debut," he wrote. "I wanted to continue, and would have given everything to make weight, but my body didn't want it. I sincerely apologize to all my fans. I will be back, like every time I fall in life." Freire, however, wasn't as forgiving. He criticized Keita for being unprofessional, and stood firm in his decision not to fight. Keita, on the other hand, expressed frustration that Pitbull didn't give him the chance to make things right, suggesting he was willing to go through with the bout despite the miss. Whether or not the UFC attempts to rebook this matchup remains uncertain, especially with Freire now calling for a fight against Arnold Allen at UFC Rio. But given Keita's pedigree and marketability, it seems likely the UFC will find a way to give him another shot, provided he can prove the weight issue was a one-off mistake and not a recurring problem. Tom Aspinall's rise to the top of the heavyweight division has been nothing short of explosive, and according to one former opponent, it may be a while before anyone knocks him off the throne. Marcin Tybura, who faced Aspinall in July 2023 and was stopped by the Brit in the very first round, recently spoke about the champion's dominance. Tybura admitted that he doesn't see any heavyweight right now who looks capable of dethroning Aspinall. "I don't see anyone beating Tom Aspinall," Tybura told MMA Fighting. "I think Tom will stay on the throne for a while, but it's not for sure, because in the past I was so sure about some champions that they'd stay there, and 2-3 fights later, they were gone because of other issues. They lost ambitions or something like this. There are lots of factors that get you there. Right now, I don't see anyone beating Tom, but you never know what's happening in the future." Aspinall captured the undisputed heavyweight crown after Jon Jones announced his retirement earlier this year. The Brit had been carrying interim gold and made it clear he was eager for a unification fight with Bones, but Jones showed no interest in that matchup and instead walked away from the sport. That decision left the door wide open for Aspinall, who now carries the undisputed title into his upcoming defense against Cyril Gane at UFC 321 on October 25th. For Aspinall, momentum is everything. Since returning from knee surgery, he's been flawless, and he hasn't needed more than one round to get the job done in nearly 4 years. His speed, precision, and composure have made him look like a level above most heavyweights, and the fact that Gane was also stopped in the first round by Jones in 2023 only adds to the intrigue. The division is no longer stalled by uncertainty at the top. Aspinall has made it clear he's here to stay and intends to keep the division moving forward. For challengers like Gane, and anyone else eyeing the belt, the task is simple but daunting. Find a way to survive Aspinall's blistering pace and finishing instincts before he finds a way to put them away early. Kamaru Usman isn't done chasing gold just yet. The former welterweight king has his eyes firmly set on the winner of the UFC 322 main event, where Della Maddalena will defend his title against Islam Makhachev in one of the most anticipated fights of the year. For Usman, the welterweight belt carries deep meaning. It was the crown he once held during his dominant run atop the division, where he was even regarded as the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. After a rough stretch that saw him drop 3 straight fights, including back-to-back losses to Leon Edwards, questions began to swirl about whether the Nigerian nightmare had reached the twilight of his career. But he quieted some of those doubts with a strong performance in his most recent outing, defeating Joaquin Buckley and proving he can still hang with elite competition. On his Pound for Pound podcast with Henry Cejudo, Usman made it clear that he sees himself as the perfect opponent for whoever leaves UFC 322 with the belt. If JDM defends that title against Islam, who better to say, okay, let's solidify him as the new generation of champion by taking on the biggest name, the former pound for pound in the division. Of course me, Usman said. Of course, if Islam wins pound for pound versus pound for pound fighting, I'm not really worried here. I've done my job to let them know, because they wanted to see, hey, are you still that guy? Can you still hang with these guys? Can you still do your thing? And I've done that. I went in there and showed them that. So I'm not worried. At 37, Usman knows the window for another title run won't stay open forever, but his name value, resume, and fighting style make him an intriguing option for the UFC. A clash with Della Maddalena would pit a proven legend against one of the fastest rising champions in the sport, while a showdown with Makhachev would deliver a blockbuster pound for pound versus pound for pound matchup that could headline any card in the world. Paul Craig has closed the chapter on his fighting career. The Scottish submission specialist officially announced his retirement after suffering a brutal TKO loss to Modestas Bukauskas in the featured bout of UFC Paris. The fight ended in dramatic and unfortunate fashion. Late in the opening round, Craig pulled guard and tried to work off his back, but Bukauskas rained down heavy ground and pound. The final elbow, which landed right as the horn sounded, split Craig open badly and left him unable to answer the call for the second round. The referee waved it off, and Craig took off his gloves to signal the end of his career. At 37, Craig walks away after a difficult 5-fight winless stretch, but his career highlights tell a much richer story. Known for his dangerous guard and knack for pulling off unlikely comebacks, Craig picked up 9 wins inside the octagon, including submissions of current light heavyweight champion Magomed Ankalaev and former champ Jamahal Hill, both victories aging remarkably well given the success of his opponents. His high-risk, high-reward style made him a fan favorite, and his trademark grit carried him through a UFC career that spanned nearly a decade. While the losses piled up toward the end, Craig retires with a reputation as one of the division's most entertaining finishers, and a fighter who always chased the submission, no matter the position. The MMA community quickly took to social media to salute Bear Jew for his contributions to the sport. Many fighters praised his willingness to face anyone and his ability to deliver unforgettable moments inside the cage. Fans, too, noted that while the final stretch was tough, Craig leaves behind a legacy defined by risk-taking and highlight finishes. That's a big development for Jack Della Maddalena and for the UFC's new media era. Per Fox Sports Australia, the reigning UFC welterweight champion has become the first fighter to sign a fresh deal under the UFC's massive $7.7 billion US broadcasting agreement that kicks in next year. The new contract reportedly locks him in for 6 fights, ensuring his title reign and star power will be central to the promotion's plans during this historic broadcast transition. JDM's deal was negotiated by Tim Simpson, the same powerhouse agent who previously helped broker Conor McGregor's blockbuster boxing crossover with Floyd Mayweather. That connection alone has fans buzzing, as Simpson's involvement suggests the UFC and Della Maddalena may already be positioning the Australian star for crossover opportunities beyond MMA. The move also underlines how much faith the promotion has in JDM. Still just 28, he's unbeaten in the UFC, has finished most of his opponents in violent fashion, and recently claimed the welterweight title. As the UFC looks to expand its reach under the new broadcast deal, having a young, marketable, highlight reel champion like Della Maddalena locked into a long-term contract feels like a no-brainer. Between this extension, his upcoming title defense versus Islam Makhachev at UFC 322, and speculation about future mega fights, JDM is quickly becoming one of the faces of the UFC's next broadcast era. Mackenzie Dern is embracing a new chapter in her career ahead of her rematch with Virna Jandiroba at UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi, this time with championship gold on the line. The two first met at UFC 256 in December 2020, where Dern edged out a decision win. Looking back on that fight, the 32-year-old admits she was still developing physically and mentally as a fighter. "I watched my fight with her last time and I was like, man, I was so petite." Dern told the MMA Hour, "I didn't really have any muscle. I was just kind of very girly girl. Now I'm way more athletic, I've been able to grow the muscle, and I have a more mature body to really fight for the championship." Dern knows the rematch won't be a repeat of their first meeting. "I know I can do it because it's been done before," she said. "So the question is if I can do it again but better this time. I know Virna will bring new stuff. We're both grapplers, but we're both different fighters now, so it's like facing a new opponent." The stakes are massive. The bout is for the vacant UFC strawweight championship, left behind by Zhang Weili after her decision to move up to flyweight. Zhang will debut in her new division against reigning champion Valentina Shevchenko at UFC 322 in New York. That makes Dern versus Jandiroba more than just a rematch. It's a battle to determine the next queen of 115 pounds, with two high-level grapplers bringing evolved versions of themselves to the octagon. Khamzat Chimaev's aura of invincibility continues to grow after he captured the middleweight crown with a commanding decision win over Dricus du Plessis at UFC 318, extending his unbeaten run to 15 straight in professional combat sports. For many, he looks untouchable, but one man who knows firsthand just how overwhelming Chimaev can be, former UFC middleweight champion Robert Whittaker, believes there's only one real path to victory against him. Whittaker, who was mauled and submitted in the first round by Chimaev last year, recalled the brutality of that loss, his jaw badly damaged from the face crank that ended the fight. Speaking on the Arcade podcast, he admitted that he can't see anyone out-wrestling Chimaev or simply surviving his relentless pressure. "I don't know how anyone beats Khamzat at the moment. His wrestling is so high-level. I feel like the way to beat Khamzat is with high-level jiu-jitsu. If Imavov has high-level back jiu-jitsu, then maybe we'll see something. It's a fight. Anything can happen. Maybe Chimaev dives into a knee or foot." That mention of Nassourdine Imavov is especially timely, as the French contender just secured a dominant win over Caio Borralho at UFC Paris, cementing his case for a title shot. Imavov's sharp striking and underrated grappling make him one of the most intriguing stylistic matchups for the new champion. But while Imavov and Reinier de Ridder both loom as logical challengers, UFC commentator Joe Rogan has thrown a different name into the mix. On a recent Fight Companion episode, Rogan argued that Sean Strickland could be the right opponent, even if he isn't the most deserving based purely on merit. Well, who else then? Who's getting Khamzat next? It really depends on what de Ridder versus Hernandez looks like. Interesting. Who is the big star behind these guys, behind Imavov? Who's the big star other than him that could leapfrog him? Strickland is the biggest star, for sure. So while Chimaev stands tall as a seemingly unstoppable force, the debate over who should challenge him next is heating up. Will it be the surging Imavov with home country momentum, the dangerous submission threat of de Ridder, or the star power of Strickland? Whatever direction the UFC takes, the target is firmly on Chimaev's back. And as Whittaker hinted, it might take something extraordinary on the mat to finally break his unbeaten streak. The long-awaited sequel between Vitor Belfort and Wanderlei Silva has once again fallen apart. The two Brazilian legends were set to headline the second-ever Spaten Fight Night event in São Paulo, Brazil on September 27th, but Belfort has officially withdrawn. Reports out of Brazil, first from Globo, confirmed that Belfort suffered a grade 3 concussion during training for the bout. The Phenom later addressed fans on Instagram, explaining that doctors advised him to pull out of the fight. The injury brings a disappointing halt to a rivalry nearly 3 decades in the making. Despite Belfort's exit, Silva will still box on the card. According to the promotion, his new opponent will be revealed this Sunday on Fantastico, one of South America's most watched TV programs. The roots of this matchup go back to 1998, when a young Belfort blitzed Silva in just 44 seconds at UFC Brazil. That highlight reel finish became one of the most iconic clips of early UFC history, replayed endlessly as Belfort cemented his reputation as one of the sport's most explosive finishers. Ever since, fans have been clamoring for a rematch. The UFC even attempted to book it at UFC 147 in 2012, but Belfort pulled out with a broken hand, forcing Rich Franklin to step in and defeat Silva by decision. Now more than a decade later, and under boxing rules, Spartan Fight Night seemed poised to finally deliver the long-delayed second chapter. Instead of Belfort, Silva will now meet a new opponent in his professional boxing debut. The announcement of a replacement on mainstream Brazilian television highlights how big this fight still is for Silva's legacy. Known as the Axe Murderer, Silva was one of Pride FC's most feared champions, and his transition to boxing is expected to draw major attention. While fans will be disappointed to miss another chapter of Belfort versus Silva, this twist keeps the door open for future speculation. Assuming Belfort can eventually recover, and the fight gods finally allow the rematch to materialize. Nassourdine Imavov walked out of UFC Paris, convinced that his next fight should be for gold. The Frenchman put on a composed and clinical striking performance against Caio Borralho in front of a home crowd, snapping the Brazilian's decade-long unbeaten run and handing him his first loss since 2015. Over 5 rounds, Imavov controlled the pace, outstruck Borralho, and walked away with a unanimous decision that he believes leaves no doubt about who the rightful #1 contender at 185 pounds is. Speaking at the post-fight press conference, the sniper didn't mince words. "People said that against Adesanya he was the best striker in the world, and I couldn't fight with him on the feet, but I knocked him out," Imavov reminded reporters. "This guy, Caio, I didn't have to fight against him, but I did it. He was coming from 10 years in a row of victories, 16 straight victories, 7 in a row in the UFC, and I won every round. Once again, I proved I'm the best. For me, there's no discussion that I'm going to fight for the belt." Imavov is now riding a 5-fight win streak, his last setback being a January 2023 decision loss to Sean Strickland, the same Strickland who shocked the world later that year by dethroning Israel Adesanya. Since then, Imavov has rebuilt his resume with statement wins, including a knockout of Adesanya, and now a dominant main event showing against Borralho. The middleweight title picture is crowded though. Khamzat Chimaev currently sits on the throne after grinding out Dricus du Plessis, and the UFC has another key matchup looming with Reinier de Ridder versus Anthony Hernandez. The winner of that bout could also make a compelling case for a title shot, depending on how spectacularly they perform. Still, Imavov believes his resume speaks for itself. He's beaten elite strikers, wrestlers, and surging contenders, and he's done so in style. Add in the momentum of headlining and winning in Paris, and the 29-year-old Frenchman might just have the perfect case for UFC brass to book him next against Chimaev. Former UFC middleweight champion Robert Whittaker is navigating a pivotal moment in his storied career with refreshing honesty. Once the undisputed king at 185 pounds and a perennial contender, the Reaper has faced a challenging stretch that has forced him to reassess his ultimate goals. Following recent losses to the undefeated Khamzat Chimaev in a grueling fight and a surprising setback against Reinier de Ridder, the MMA community has been abuzz with questions about Whittaker's future. Debates have swirled over whether the 33-year-old should persist in the crowded middleweight division or test the waters at light heavyweight. However, in a candid interview with Submission Radio, Whittaker revealed a shifted perspective, moving from a singular focus on the title to embracing the final chapters of his career with his family at the forefront. Whittaker openly acknowledged that his recent defeats have created significant distance between himself and another shot at the gold. "The belt is kind of like a pipe dream at the moment after losing to de Ridder," Whittaker admitted. "It's another loss. It pushes me back much further than I want to be, from the title, the pathway to where I wanted to finish up." This frank assessment highlights the reality of the fight game, where momentum is everything, and a single loss can derail years of progress. Rather than dwelling on the postponed title aspirations, Whittaker has chosen to redefine success for the remaining fights on his contract. His new focus is on gratitude, enjoyment, and sharing the unique experience with his children. So right now my trajectory has kind of changed. I've got a few fights left. I want to enjoy the journey, he explained. I want to enjoy the camp process. I want to enjoy fight week. I want to enjoy the fight itself. The most poignant part of his new mission is to involve his family. I want my family to be part of that. I want my boys and my kids to see the show, see the background of the big corporation that is the UFC, the most professional MMA tournament in the world, through eyes nobody else can before I wrap things up. So that's my biggest goal right now. This shift in perspective from a relentless pursuit of a belt to a desire to savor every moment underscores the maturity of a veteran who has given his all to the sport. While the fire to compete still burns, Robert Whittaker's legacy is now being defined not just by wins and losses, but by the wisdom to appreciate the journey itself.